Yeah, all right, guys. I just want to welcome.
You look intelligent now, Joey.
Thank you, brother. Just want to welcome this little panel we've got here. So I'll go around and introduce ourselves. But my name's Joey Tangaloa Taualli. I've been in this country for over 47 years. I'm currently in MITA Detention Centre. I've been here for over around 15 months. I just want to make it clear that we are not foreign criminals. We're a product of Australian society. And this is a little bit about us guys and what's going on here. I'll pass you on now to some of the brothers and they can introduce themselves. We'll start off with Sammy. You want to introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name's Sam Abrahim. I've done 8 years jail. I came here when I was like 5 years old. I've been here over 50 years. I'm not a foreign criminal. I'm a product of Australia. So I became a criminal when I came to Australia. Australia raised me. I went to school here. They taught me how to become a criminal. So it's pretty much Australian way of life. That's how it was when we were kids. Everybody was pretty much a criminal. We done wrong things. We went down the wrong roads, and now we're paying the price for it. But as everyone knows, everybody in detention is no longer a criminal. We are rehabilitated people. We've done all our programs, and we're not a threat to the community whatsoever, because you can't separate us from our families, and we're never going to risk losing our family to come back to detention, and that's the truth.
All right, Sammy, but we'll get Wagdy, just let you know that this is being recorded, Wagdy, it's recording, okay?
Yeah, that's all right, Joe.
Yeah, I'll just get Julian to introduce himself, and we'll keep going around, because I know, Julian, you're a busy man and you're not feeling well today. But thanks for your time.
No worries, Joey. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good.
Thanks
brother.
for inviting us. Thanks for inviting us on. Well, I came here in 1969, so I've been here well over 50 years. I was 4 years old and came from England and granted permanent residence immediately as a 4-year-old. Went to primary school, secondary school, and then university in Adelaide. Worked as an engineer for over 10 years, and I became a VC maths and physics teacher at disadvantaged schools, so one just down the road here in Dallas. So in my life in Australia, I've built many, designed and structurally designed and built many buildings, and then taught disadvantaged, socially disadvantaged and economically disadvantaged students mathematics and physics, and I'm quite proud to say that they all did very, very well. And a few of them have actually gone on to university, and one in particular has become a physics teacher, which he claims was inspired by me. So I'm very, very proud of that. I have an Australian daughter, an Australian partner, and I never had any involvement with the police until I was 27, and that was over a matter that was dealt with. And when I released from prison, then I never had any contact with the police for another 20 years, and they're trying to deport me for basically earning a financial advantage of zero value by working as a teacher for below minimum wage. So this is just how insane this country's become, that a person who is actually working below minimum wage to help disadvantaged students is viewed as a threat to society, and they're trying to deport him. So quite incredible, really, when you think about it in the overall context. I just want to go on from what Sammy said, because I think Sammy made a very valid point. If you are from overseas and you come here when you're very young, Australian society never really gives you a chance, because I was always the pommy bastard at school, and I played soccer and I didn't play Aussie rules. But I happened to be very good at it, which really annoyed them. But because of that, they targeted me. And so I was basically, and a lot of you guys can also appreciate this, racially abused simply because I came from overseas. And try as you do to become assimilated and mix and become Australian, there's always that threshold that you can't go past, because you're always considered to be from overseas and therefore not one of them or one of us, however you view it. So this is a reflection of how prejudiced and how biased society is. And this is what Scott Morrison and before him John Howard and Peter Dutton have latched onto, this xenophobic attitude of Australian people because they're in this isolated little country that's away from the rest of the world. And very few Australians travel. Very few Australians go overseas and see what other countries are like. So they're fearful because this is the only thing that they know. And the politicians, especially the Liberal Party, have latched into that fear and manipulated it into gaining cheap votes by trying to scare the Australian population that we're a threat to them. And I'd understand if Joey, 47 years, Sammy over 50, myself over 50, and Ahmed, I'm not sure how long you've been here, but I believe it will be a long time as well. Why is it after 50 years we've become a threat? Why was it not 20 years ago or 30 years ago? Why does it take 50 years for them to suddenly decide that we've been a threat to Australian society when we've held jobs, we've paid taxes, we've done a lot of constructive things in the community, we've married Australian partners, we've had Australian children, which we've raised. And now, if you think about it, the suspicion is that now we're becoming to the end of our useful working life. Australia's looking for the opportunity to get rid of us.
Yeah.
And this is what they latch onto. And they latch onto it because it's an easy way to scare the population who are very ignorant of cultures from the rest of the world.
So Jules, can I just say, Jules, when you hear that they call us foreign criminals in the Prime Minister, what do you think when they call us foreign criminals? What goes through your mind?
Sure, that's a really good question, Joey, because I'm English, and the last time I looked, the Queen of England was also the Queen of Australia, and Australia speaks my language and actually has the monarchy as the head of state here. Now, you think about it, Joey, the treaty that was just signed between Australia, New Zealand, United States, and England, or Great Britain. Let's just say, for example, China attacks Australia. Now, if I'm English and I get deported for being a foreign criminal, I could go back to England and then be conscripted into the British Army to come back and then fight for Australia under that treaty. So how can I possibly be a foreigner when I've invested my whole life? I invested my children and I invested my partner and my career into this country. Now, how is that logically possible that I could possibly be a foreigner when I went to England for a year on a work exchange? As far as they were all concerned, I was an Aussie. When I worked in China for a year, as far as they were concerned, I was just Aussie. You know, I can talk about AFL football, I can talk about NRL far better than most Australians, and I can tell you a lot more about Australian history than most Australians. Now, how can it possibly be that I'm a foreigner when I've invested my whole life here? The claim is clearly politically and vindictively motivated claim to blur what is a criminal and what is a foreign criminal, and to blur the identity of people that are in detention. It's just a malicious attempt to paint us as somehow being different. And I go back to what I talked about before about the ignorance of Australians in general about cultures from overseas. Now, a lot of things Australians see that people do from overseas is not threatening or harmful, it's just different. And it really comes back to the psychological insecurity of Australians can be so easily manipulated by vindictive and malicious politicians by labelling us foreign criminals. When, if you really think about it, most Australians are actually foreign. Certainly the Australian Aboriginal would agree with that. Now, if you go to New Zealand, you're exactly the same. The Queen of New Zealand is also the Queen of Great Britain, the Queen of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So if you've sworn allegiance to that Queen and you are a British subject, then how can you be foreign? It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So I take your point, Joey, that we cannot be foreign in any context, any form. And just a manipulation of a few words in a document that's put before politicians in breach of the Constitution does not make us foreign. You have to look at what we've done and look at our heart, and you can tell that we're not foreigners whatsoever.
Also, before 1987, if correct me if I'm wrong, we were all under the British Empire. Is that correct?
What you're saying, Joey, is a very important point to make. The Australia Act was actually in 1986, and I believe it was actually came to be passed in 1987. Now, prior to that, any British subject actually, if they lived in came to Australia would be granted permanent residency, provided that person then had no contact with the police for 10 years. There is no way that person could be deported, unless it was something like a serial killer that had killed 10 people or so forth. But even then, up until 1986, 87, the Australia Act, which many people believe is a fraudulent act, and there's very good grounds to believe that to be true, it was certainly impossible to deport a person that was a British subject that has spent 10 years in this country incident-free, that is no contact with the police whatsoever. And that's not unusual. If you go to every other Western country in the world, and some countries, it's like France and Belgium, it's only 5 years and you become a permanent resident that can't be deported. Yeah. But if you look at the reciprocal arrangement in England, if you're an Australian and you go to England and you're there for 10 years, incident-free, and then you happen to commit a crime where you are punished for more than 12 months, you cannot be deported. This is the only country in the world that adopts that Neanderthalic viewpoint, that somehow a crime of 12 months makes you unworthy to be a participant in this country, when a lot of us have been here so long. And me myself, for example, I'm actually in the electoral roll, and I actually vote, and I've actually voted on referendums which changes the constitution. Yeah. And therefore, clearly, I'm part of the body politic. I'm part of the Australian community. If I'm actually voting on matters that are part of the changes to the constitution, then clearly I'm part of the country. Yeah. It's just the whole concept, when you look at it, is certainly disgusting and a slight on Australia's reputation. And having said that, and been overseas a couple of times on work employment exchange programs, this has been known overseas. I have American friends that know that. For some people, American friends, oxymoron there. I have American friends who know what's going on in this country and make no doubt in their mind. There is no doubt whatsoever that this is a complete breach of human rights and one of the biggest and most disgusting episodes in Australian history. There is very little difference between this policy of removing foreign criminals that have been living the whole life in Australia and the white Australia policy. This is just another variation of this. And it's played upon the fears of the Australian people. There's no way that we can be foreigners. So going back to your point, Joey, look, the whole British Empire becoming the British Commonwealth concept was that the unifying force was the kingdom, was the monarchy of the United Kingdom, the Queen. And this is not the person, the Queen, but the institution that is the Queen. Is the unifying force for all those countries, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and numerous countries all around the world. All follow British law, all have English as their first language, all have English common law as their base. Yeah. And one of the guarantees of that loyalty to the Queen, which we all have because we're here, is that the Queen also has loyalty to her subjects. And if you happen to move to a country and you're there for 10 years, you cannot be deported because you're a British subject and you have certain privileges and certain rights. And that is entwined in the Constitution. That is part of the Australian Constitution. And if you read through that Constitution, you will see that has never been changed. You need a referendum to change that, and that's never happened. So therefore, we still possess those rights now. And this bastardized form of 501 is really just a deception, a smoke and mirrors deception that is illegal in its context. And just used to make sure that politicians, especially the Liberal Party, are able to get votes by playing on the insecurities and fears of Australians. And the insecurities and fears that have only resulted because of the chaotic and haphazard policies of Australia overseas and their foreign policy towards countries like China and so forth. So this is the mechanism they do. They create a fear, and Peter Dutton's doing this now with China. And then they try to create the solution to that fear. And they've done this with the bikies and so forth. Yeah. They've created this fear of bikies. And in most cases, look, I don't have a lot of interaction with bikies, but I've never ever had an issue with them. And they've always been extremely polite to me when I bumped into them, because I've always said sorry. No, but they've created this fear.
Yeah.
And now you actually, when you think about doing that, that is such a nasty and vindictive thing to do, because you're deliberately creating anxiety in people for your selfish purpose. So you manipulate people's emotions, and the media do this. They assist the politicians. They manipulate people's emotions for their own selfish needs. And this is just a horrendous thing to do. If you and I went out there and manipulated a situation for our own benefit, a lot of cases we would be arrested. But of course, when politicians do it, it's they're looking after us. So this nanny state they've created is just falls into their hands. And if you didn't extend that out, you can see Australia is a country that's surrounded by a huge moat, which they call the Pacific and oceans and so forth. And for that reason, most people don't go outside that moat. So gradually over the generations, the squeeze and the removal of human rights, which Australia's never had, by the way, and the removal of freedoms is just slowly been taken, this has happened, and they're all been taken away from us. You might know this already, Joe, but Australia is the only Western country in the world that does not have a Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
Only Western country in the world that does not have a Bill of Rights.
I think.
Now, why would that be?
I think you mentioned.
I told you that, did I?
Yeah.
That in itself, what does that tell you? It's clear. And when that's brought up in Parliament that Australia should have their Bill of Rights, it's always shot down. Well, that straight away tells you something's wrong. Why does it take every other Western country in the world less than 3 months to make a visa decision? And Australia is just endless.
Yeah.
The time period that we stay here is just endless. It is never, yeah, exactly right, Sammy. And it's deliberately designed this way because I'm sure everyone that's in this chat, in this chat knows that at international law, to do this is illegal. This is a breach of international law.
Yeah.
But if they can manipulate your detention period so that you become so disheartened and so emotionally distraught and mentally tormented,
which is what's happening.
Exactly right, Joe. And that's planned. It's all planned. This is what this detention centre is for. It is very, very clever. It is very, very vindictive. It's very malicious, but it's very, very clever. From the moment you get in here, you are bombarded by negativity. Everyone is trying to undermine you.
Jules,
Everyone is trying. Yep.
Just to interrupt, I apologise, but it's going to cut out. Can we reboot? Because I only get 40 minutes every time, so it's going to cut out.
Have I been talking that long? Have I?
No, it's because we sat around waiting for you. We actually lost about 25 minutes.
Okay.
But it's going to reboot in a minute, and then
That's a nice way of
back
telling me
in.
to shut